Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited today. I have on the show today none other than Dr. Brad Hughes. Brad and I have been engaging with each other. I think it's kind of like a little mini LinkedIn battle to see who can be a little more creative. But in the pre show, we were just talking. I just want to say, I don't do blame and shame, I don't do victimhood very well, but he has people. He has people working that camera. So as I do the selfies, he's got a team, but we're going to get into that. So Dr. Brad Hughes DDS is the founder and CEO of Vision Dental Partners, an emerging dental group with 8 locations between Indiana and South Carolina. A 2007 graduate of the Indiana University School of Dentistry, go Hoosiers, and a third generation dentist. Oh, we've got to unpack that one for sure. I mean, this is like pre-gloves and all that. That can be a fun story. Hopefully there's pictures. With a passion for growing teams and helping others thrive, both personally and professionally. Love that. Dr. Hughes has dedicated his career to fostering leadership and development in his practices and throughout the dental industry. And if you don't follow him on socials, shame on you. I'm throwing shame at you. So much good content there. Outside of work, he's a father of 2 twin 5-year-old daughters and enjoys flying as a private pilot. Brad's entrepreneurial spirit and commitment to growth continue to shape the future of his expanding dental group and the dental space as a whole. Brad, welcome.
Excited to be here, Greg. This is going to be fun.
So much fun. So much fun. Do you like how I opened by throwing shade at you?
Yeah, that was brutal. And but it's deserved because admittedly, which, your content is amazing. I do have the unfair advantage because I have my man Tebow following me around. But still, in 2025, it's still going to be a you and me battle. So I'm expecting
it's on like Donkey Kong.
Yeah, you gotta elevate, man.
When you talk about Tebow following you around, I have this image of Family Guy when he's walking around and there's the guy playing the tuba for all the back cut. So I don't know. Does Tebow follow? I need Tebow. Tebow, if you're listening, I need you to follow him around and make tuba noises on one of your clips. And I need that to be posted up. Because if you guys really are all about being authentic and being transparent, because I see what you teach, right? Leadership and the leadership training that you do, it is all about team development and authenticity and transparency. So Tebow, I know you're going to watch this. I'm telling you, Brad, if this doesn't happen, we're going to have a conversation.
So we will soon have, and I don't remember specifically when, but soon we're kind of like flipping the script where I'm kind of going behind the camera and Tebow, his name's Tim, by the way, Tebow has to come out in front of the camera. And mind you, this is like a SCAD, like the Savannah College of Art and Design, like one of the top, schools for filmmaking in the country. Like Tim is like a film guy. So, I mean, he's phenomenal, by the way, but like we're flipping the script and he's going to have to be in my role for a little bit of the content. So it'll be fun. So you get to meet the famous Tebow.
Well, I love this. And I already have something like this planned as well. So I'm the one who gets to be on camera for all of our podcasts and YouTube and, the voice of the Tooth Sleuth podcast and of G&A Consult. But Murphy, who is my producer and also my executive assistant, been with me for a year and a half. Anyone who listens or has ever had a meeting with me has engaged with Murphy. She's fantastic. And she, as well as my director of operations and also our training manager, are all going to be on a podcast episode that we'll use as our Christmas episode. And we're recording that next week. So all the people behind the scenes are coming in front of the scenes as well. So I love that. So that sounds like a fantastic opportunity. So, I made comment as I'm reading your bio, because I can't help but comment on things. A 3rd generation dentist. So I usually ask people for their origin story, but I'd have to think there's some story in there. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, interestingly enough, like that's always, I think it was just like assumed that I was going to go into dentistry. But honestly, like I can very clearly remember driving that trek from Fort Wayne, Indiana down to Bloomington in August of 1998. And, I'm sitting in the the back seat of the car, like trying to figure out how to do laundry because I probably had never done it, and like freaking out over that above anything. And my dad's like, "So what are you gonna major in?" I'm like, "Biology." He's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go to dental school." And you kind of just see his eyes look up in the rearview mirror, like, "Okay, cool." So, I grew up around it. It really genuinely, I enjoyed listening to my grandfather and my dad talk about it, but it wasn't that drove me into it. I had no idea. I mean, anybody that says they know what they're getting into when they're becoming a dentist, like they're just lying. You don't know what you're getting into until you're there. But I knew the piece that I really loved was the leadership component and the part of a community that you become. And my dad would come to my little league games. We would go out to restaurants around Fort Wayne, Indiana, and people knew who he was, and they knew who he was. Not number one because he's a great guy, but it was the relationships that he'd built with them over the course of years. From them coming in the office, it didn't matter where we went, he knew people, and I just thought that was so amazing, and that really drove me in that direction. I just saw the relationships he built, and I'm like, that's what I want to go do.
I mean, that had to have been like Hollywood star-esque, right? In your community. And I talk about this often when I talk about how to build, especially in full arch, right? Because it's so much more than just throw up some ads and direct to consumer marketing. The other of the pillar, the triangle that I talk about, is really one of them is community engagement, right? Get to be involved in your community, right? It probably goes back to my Midwest roots as well, right? You're from the Midwest. And there's something to be said about that. And then, of course, right, referral is another key aspect, the other part of the other third of that triangle of success when it comes to, being an expert and seen as an expert, as somebody who is respected in the field of full arch dentistry. So I can appreciate you sharing that. And so when you talk about leadership, you know, one of the things that I find um, is that leaders you can certainly develop into, but there are inspirations along the way. The triangle of success that I use comes from Phil Jackson, 11 rings, his triangle offense, right? Triangle defense, right? I mean,
Let's also not forget Tex Winters and all of that, right?
You can have Tex. I'll take Phil Jackson just because
The
I know that
godfather of
the bad boys of my Detroit Pistons in 89 and 90 beat down those Bulls, right? It was between the Celtics, right? The Celtics Lakers, right? Era of the 80s, and
yeah.
then the Bulls domination of the 90s, right? My Detroit Pistons like wedged in there before Phil Jackson had his like domination of the NBA. But it is that, his success and about team and team first, to be able to take all of those personalities that he had at different points of his teams, whether it was the Bulls, whether it was the Lakers, right, bringing Shaq and Kobe together, and someone like that it's not just the Shaq and Kobe era, right, with the Lakers, because those were the stars. But if you looked at all of the role players, which arguably some of them would have been stars on other teams, but to have them say, here is what your role is going to be on this team. And if everybody plays their part, this is how we can excel as a group. And so that's where I use a lot of foundationally how to try to motivate individuals. And it starts at the top, right? It starts at Bill Jackson, right? And being able to inspire and lead. And it's the same if you look at Bill Belichick with the Patriots, right? Love him or hate him, right? There is the Belichick way. They talk about the Belichick way. And so it's the same with founders. And so share with me a little bit about, maybe it is Tex Winters, but share with me about who you've been inspired by and pieces of along the way, because we see what leadership style you have, right, with some of the clips that you post, which I think are just phenomenal.
Oh, thank you, by the way. Gosh, this is going to sound extreme, but I'll tie it back in. So, I grew up in Indiana Hoosier, IU undergrad, IU dental school. I applied to one undergrad. There's a reason for that. My man, Bobby Knight. And again, Bill Belichick, whatever you want to go, whatever path you want to go down. There's good and there's great about all of these people. Look at Saban at Alabama.
He
I
was at
mean, look,
Michigan State first, by the way.
is it Michigan State, by the way? Yes, he was. I mean, look at Kurt Signetti at IU right now. He has a way that he does things, and there's an accountability, the same way Bobby Knight did, right? And I mean, I was born in 1980. This was the heyday of Indiana basketball, and I mean, I genuinely was shaped by a lot of the things that I'm not sitting in the middle of a dental practice. I'm not sitting in the middle of an office just yelling at everybody to get. But that wasn't what Bobby Knight did either. It was the level and accountability. It was the type of accountability that he held his players to in practice, the attention to detail, whether it was studying film. I mean, the stories about other coaches, I mean, really well-known coaches that have won NBA or at college basketball titles that have sat down to watch film with Bobby Knight, and they're like, the things that he can point out are insane. The attention to detail, the accountability from his players, and the way that these former players come back, and the respect that they had for him. There's no question it shaped me when I was young. I mean, that was every dude that grew up in Indiana in the 80s and early 90s. I mean, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to go play basketball at IU, right? At least the smart ones. And but I think there's a way that they went about things that was about winning. And I just think all the greats have some level of that, whatever that thing is. I mean, Jordan, Kobe, these guys that I'm sure it was not easy to play on the same teams, but they sure as hell elevated people up around them. I mean, you look at, Jordan made BJ Armstrong a better player. Pau Gasol was a very good player in the NBA. Kobe made him a potential Hall of Famer. I mean, Pau Gasol's really good. Kobe made him great, in my opinion. And I think that's what the greats do from a leadership standpoint. To your point, they just elevate those up around him. I think Coach Knight was able to do that. Like, that is genuinely my objective every single day. I still practice 4 days a week. The main reason for that is that I can now still show that I practice exactly what I preach on a daily basis. And so when I'm onboarding, when I'm coaching, whether we're coaching around leadership, whether we're coaching around, I don't do a ton of clinical coaching. It's mostly around case acceptance, correct verbiage, relationship building, building teams. I bring them to me. I bring them to my practice in South Carolina. They spend X amount of time with me, depending on kind of where they're at in the journey. And I show them that exactly what I do every single day, I practice what I preach. And I'm not going to have them do anything that I don't do. But if you want to do things at a high level, if you want to have a 90% case acceptance, if you want to be around a multi-million-dollar producer, if you want to learn how to run things efficient and effectively, come where I'm at and we will coach you to do that. And we go from there. So that's really the main reason I practice. But I don't want to lose touch in that way. I don't want to lose sight of that piece, because I think it's easy to get away from it. And then, it for me, it just builds my authority.
I can appreciate what you shared there. I was at a retreat this weekend because I try to find as much balance as possible. As an entrepreneur, I think, what you share it resonates as well, right? As a clinician as well as an entrepreneur, right? Trying to find that area. And somebody shared their transparency was the word that they had. We all had different words to be able to share on integrity, and transparency was one. And he shared that transparency is when our actions meet our words. And what you just shared there was having your actions meeting your words. So a form of leadership is to align those two things. And you finished by talking about case acceptance and G&A consult, as you're familiar, right? So there's two sides to what we do. There's the operational side, with the P&Ls and the numbers and the, messaging and whatnot. And then the messaging side of the sales and coaching, right? Sales and training part, to improve case acceptance, right? Converting leads into consultations and consultations into case acceptance, into starts for full arch practices and those that do full arch and practices that do a lot of other. And being able to do it on your home turf, right? And being able to show the patient walk flow and how they're treated every step of the journey is something to be able to bring them to you, right? If you want to learn, it's pretty straightforward, right? If you want to learn, come see how I've been able to do it. I've been able to create it, how I do it on a daily basis. And I'll get very vulnerable with you here. It was one of the pieces that was, I don't want to say lacking, but it wasn't of the highest of caliber at GNA Consult, when I can take treatment coordinators to a certain level. But because I haven't sat in that role for a period of time selling high-end cases, I can only do it to a certain level. That's why now we have a training manager who literally not only did sell the big cases for years, but also taught and coached and trained not just the treatment coordinators, but those that are doing the lead calls and clinicians as well. So there is a congruency with language, with nonverbal communication, with processes and workflows, and same with my director of operations that has done it both in individual clinics and emerging groups and with a fairly large DSO. So those are the people. I only know as much as I know, right? Which I think it's a lot, but I'm not an expert in each area, and it allows people to specialize and share their specialization, right, in what they do. And it sounds to me like that's what you're sharing. Am I hearing that right?
100%. I don't have all the answers, but I can guarantee you, for what I do and what I've done for the last 17, all of the systems I've developed over the last 17 and a half years that have made me successful, and our company to help us scale. And we've got a bunch of other doctors in this company that do really, really well. And that's a testament to them putting in the work. It's not just me waving a magic wand and it just happens. I mean, it obviously takes time, but that's exactly it. And the hard part to that is, if I wasn't fully confident in my systems and in the way I operate, it'd be really hard to have somebody come here and just do it at a half-ass level and then expect them to go back and have any respect for me, right? So when they're here, I mean, you use the word vulnerability. It doesn't mean every day is great. I mean, sometimes in dentistry, there's just some freaking hard days. And, there are days where not everything goes as planned. Case acceptance is, we have a very high case acceptance, but it ain't 100%, right? So the days where it's a little lower, and I've had those when doctors are around, it's like, okay, let's sit down, and it's just like watching the game film. What could I have done better? What could I have done better? I'm going to literally break down my entire exam with that patient. I'm going to tell you what I would do differently. And then I want you to critique my own assessment of myself. So I'm getting feedback from my doctors on what I'm doing. And I think that's important, because if I can't allow them to do that with me, I don't deserve the right to be able to do that with them. And so I think it's a very vulnerable, authentic way to approach it. I don't like to do those. Sometimes we do some coaching over Zoom. I have to. I'm 500-600 miles away from some of these offices, but it's important to me to be able to do these things one-on-one, so that as I'm in their practice and we're giving feedback, they've already done that with me, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I lost the ego around that a long time ago. It took me a minute, but I think we pretty well killed that off. And because I think that's the only way to be able to do this at a high level.
Well, it's a great growing edge, right? To be able to set aside ego and humble yourself enough to do that. And we see that in being able to build the trust with clients and those that we're working with that are in every touch point of the patient journey, right? So those that are handling the phone calls, and be able to listen to a recorded phone call on a weekly basis and allow those that are taking the calls to listen to themselves and do some self-analysis. And what are you hearing here? And because most of the time we're our own worst critics across the board, because team members want, oh, please go ahead. I was just going to say team members want to do well. And so giving them the tools is a gift. And if we're going to talk about retention, and we're going to talk about finding the best and the brightest to work in our practices, and what do we do, with all the, all the churn rate and all that, what are you doing to invest in them?
Yeah.
Right. So please go ahead. You were going to say
Well,
something.
no, you just, I mean, that's a great point. And I think when but you also, having an environment where they're allowed to learn, meaning the self-assessment part, which I think is incredibly important. I mean, I'm literally saying I'm doing it with my doctors around what I'm doing. You've got to, they have to be in an environment where they know it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to have the mindset to just keep getting better and better and better. And eventually it will become, that conscious unconscious competence is where you've just mastered this thing and you're not even thinking about it. It's like doing, for a dentist who's been doing this for 17, it's like doing a crown prep on number 8, right? You just do it. You're like, I literally was thinking about like an NFL game I watched yesterday while I'm prepping this too. Like maybe we should, let's be honest. I mean, there's a point where when you're doing a single crown, like you just do it and you don't even think about it. And that's what it becomes for them on the phone, but they had to be allowed to make mistakes. It was like, okay for them to go, man, that was a 3 out of 5 phone call. Here's what I could have done better. And they're not afraid that you're just like, you know what, Jackie, just get out of here. Because that's not the way this works. I mean, it's, we talk about, the sports analogy. I mean, what John Wooden would bring 5-star recruits in that he paid for, by the way. And
there it is.
and the first thing was, let's teach you to tie your shoes. Here's the UCLA way to tie your shoes. Okay. But then let's go win 10 straight NCAA championships, right? Like that's the attention to detail that it takes. And, when you've got people that are that bought in, where it's an athlete that's that bought in, dude comes in as one of the top ranked players in the country, comes in, he's like, okay, I'm so bought into this that I'm going to teach you to tie my shoes the UCLA way. I mean, if you can do that with a front desk team member, holy moly. I mean, you talk about retention, you're investing in them, you're giving them a place to learn how to be self-accountable in like a healthy environment. I mean, that's everything. That's perfection.
Well, and it starts at the top, right? I mean, by showing, right? Not by your being as well, but also by showing that we're all human, right? And to be human is to err, but also to learn and grow from it, right? It reminds me of the book Atomic Habits. I think it's by James Clear. And one of the foundational pieces of that book is to get 1% better every day. It doesn't say you have to be perfect, right? It just says to improve 1% better every day. And then it all, as you were talking, it reminds me of the Richard Branson quote of train your people so well that they can leave but treat them well enough to where they don't want to. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, and forgive me, Richard Branson, for bastardizing your quote. But that, I mean, in essence, that's really what we're talking about, that, creating the environment. And the other piece is, and we find this as we engage with practices, on the full arch side, not everybody necessarily wants to. And so it does expose that small percentage that, a good friend of mine shared, that sometimes people are just deep in sleep and they don't want to be woken up. And that's okay too. Doesn't mean that they're bad people. That's okay too. Right. But for those that do, being able to give them the opportunity to grow in this way really is what will help with retention and fidelity and keep them engaged and growing, which is ultimately going to pay, off a 5-fold, 10-fold for your practice. So I love
100%.
it. Well, Brad, it's part of the program. All of my guests play a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind, are you ready to play?
Do it.
All right. Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Oh my God.
Careful, you still like your wife, and you have
yeah, like
5-year-old
I'm
twins
like,
at home.
wait, we left to go get the girls, so I think I should be good. Worst, so okay, so probably the worst was 2000, early 2007, still in dental school. I distinctly remember we had to do this, like when we would see new patients to the dental school, they would like put us in these rooms where we would do this like initial screening thing, and I was like locked in this room with this dude who had no bone and teeth that were like, he would talk and they were like a flag, they were like waving in the wind. I think I had like 6 masks on, and 4 of them were soaked in Listerine, and I still was almost throwing up. Like, it was disgusting. I don't remember his face. He had this big beard. That's kind of all I remember. Like, to this moment, I'm like, but I'll get past it. That was the worst for sure.
Okay, 25-minute mark. Please go over to the YouTube channel if you're only doing audio, because the way that he wiggled his finger, I can literally see the teeth hanging on just by a strand. That was amazing. Well done on that one. All right, question number 2. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
I've got some. I've had these veneers now since 2006. That I was in dental school, but my excellent dentist dad did them. There's a little recession because I've got like, for years kind of like clench them, grind them, all that stuff. So there's a little recession on like up along the gum line of like the front 2 teeth. I'd probably just like, I don't know. I'm starting to show a little bit too much root surface. I need to get them done here soon. So somebody needs to hit me up and give me a deal.
Do you know any dentists?
I need to. Yeah. If there's any good dentists out there, send me a video resume of why you should be the one.
We're playing matchmaker now on the Toon Sleuth podcast. I don't know that was part of the pre-screening to get on this show, Brad. We could definitely do this like in a crossover on like a LinkedIn video. We could get Tiva. Oh my gosh, I'm making a note of this one for sure. Okay, question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose your own if you've got one that you did, which one would you choose and why?
Ooh, the inventor of any dental product. First thing that comes to mind. Let's do. Gosh darn. You said first thing. Okay, first thing that comes to mind. I'm gonna say. I'll say dental implant, because I think that it's, all of the things that come with the dental CBCTs, the AI technology, like all of this stuff, which is like cool and great, and everybody thinks digital scanners and CBCTs are going to like triple their practice and all that stuff, which is awesome. But I'm a little facetious there. But I think like a dental implant is, I think they've just, genuinely changed the game from having to do partials and just bridges in every scenario. And I would say probably dental implant. Gosh, I just can't even imagine 10 years from now just how many. There's already just millions and millions and millions placed every year. Another decade, I think it's just going to be wild. So probably a dental implant.
I agree.
It's not a real sexy answer, but
no, it's a good answer. Wait till the 100th episode's coming out, and we've already got a graph for each of the questions and like what has come out. So I think you'll be interested in seeing that. So even though you don't think it's a sexy answer, I think you'll be interested.
I hope I didn't go with everybody else, because if I said the same as everybody else, that's so lame.
I won't say you went with everybody else. I just think you'll find it insightful, like your answer and where it fits into the grand scheme of things. It's okay. You don't always have to be sexy, Brad. It's okay.
No, I know. You
be you.
I know this pull up is really,
it's really hitting the mark. Oh, well, Brett, in the last few minutes, I want to respect your time and my listening audience. Is there anything you haven't shared that you'd like to share with my listening audience or with people, out in the ether who might pick this up as they're flying by in a satellite from some faraway galaxy?
No, I just, number one, I'm just so excited to be on this podcast. Like I've seen just a ton of your episodes, Greg. You do a phenomenal job. All your content across LinkedIn. I feel like we've built a bit of a relationship over time, despite having never met in person. All these things. So I think it's a testament to, number one, the dental community. There's a lot of really great people. Number two, um, just the interactions that you can have through a social platform, um, and really be able to build relationships and brands and just all of these really cool things. And so I always just appreciate your interacting with my content, and I always just respect the hell out of the stuff that you put out. And I'm just excited to have been on today.
Hmm. Humbled by your words. My guest on the Tooth Sleuth podcast has been Dr. Brad Hughes. He's the founder and CEO of Vision Dental Partners and the father of twin 5-year-old daughters. Thank you so much, Brad.